Hey guys, Ezra here, and welcome back to another Ezra review. And today we're going to be reviewing Zootopia 2. Now, this is obviously a sequel to the first Zootopia movie, released 9 years ago, which is damn. Time flies, man. I remember watching Zootopia, the first movie when I was in middle school, which is the first animated movie that I watched on theaters. And now 9 years later, I almost graduated from college, and watching Zootopia 2, which is like, damn, it's been that long. I'm so glad that Disney decided to make Zootopia 2, because I think I loved the first movie and I really, really wanted to see a sequel, even back in 2016. But after that, Disney kind of went quiet for a while, until like recently where they announced Zootopia 2. And there is a bit of a worry for me. I was a bit concerned, if Zootopia 2 will live up to the hype, will live up to the first film or not, because let's be real here. Disney doesn't have a good track record with sequel. They always make one amazing movie and then the sequel kind of sucks or like kind of forgettable. It's the movie that just exists. From Frozen to Moana to even Incredibles 2. Which at the time I like it, but now looking back at it, I'm like, like it's not as good as the first one. And I think it does kind of fumble, in the sequel. But I think I'm happy to report that Zootopia 2 does live up to the hype, at least for me. I don't think this movie is better than the first movie, but it is a really, really fun sequel, that I think has a good job to expanding the lore of Zootopia, introducing the reptiles, animals, and then of course having more moments between Judy and Nick, that I think are absolutely fantastic. This is like a really, really fun sequel that you can tell that the people who made this movie, which is Jared Bush and Brian Howard, like they care for the sequel, and it wasn't just exist for a cash grab. And I am so happy. It's been a long time since I walk out of the theaters watching a Disney movie that makes me happy. It's been a while, but Zootopia 2 finally makes me happy. And after finished watching, I was like, man, it was so cool. I love it. So Zootopia 2 obviously took place. It actually took place like 1 week, I think, after the event of the first film, which is wild. And it does focus more on Judy and Nick this time around, and I think their partnership are tested this time around, where these two has a clashing personalities, and at first it kind of makes me eye rolling for a little bit, where I was like, well, you kind of built the partnership between Judy and Nick in the first movie, and I think they kind of did it again in this movie, but I do think they did a good job explaining why these two has their own differences, and it wasn't like a selfish thing between the two of them, but it's because these two are genuinely care for each other, and at some point it just makes me kind of tear up, just to see how Judy and Nick care for each other, and I think it was absolutely amazing, and I think the movie does introduce a reptile, in this movie, which is amazing. And we see a new character named Gary the Snake, voiced by Kehuyquan, that I think he also did a great job. Everybody does a great job. Like from ginnifergoodwin, Jason Bateman, Idriselba. Like all of them does a great job. Even Macaulay Culkin was in this movie, which is that's fun. Yeah, I think that the story itself is a nice continuation from the first movie. Because not only they explore the relationship between Judy and Nick again, but also introduces a new case this time around that actually related to the lore of Zootopia, because in the first movie, the mysterious case, is literally just missing mammals, which is great, But on the sequel, I'm really, really glad that this new case that Judy and Nick are taken are actually related to the past lore of Zootopia, and you learn more why how Zootopia came to be in this movie, and I think it was absolutely fantastic, and there is a good mysteries as well, where you kind of keep sometimes you gotta keep guessing where the story will goes, and it was actually really, really worth it by the time you get to the end, where you did learn more about what actually happened to the city of Zootopia, and it was great. And speaking of Wild and Hobbs, I fully aware that there is some people who ship Judy and Nick, including me, to be honest. I did kind of ship them, to be honest. And I think this movie that's going to further solidify the shippers of Wild Hobbs, because not only that Wild Hobbs was actually mentioned in the movie, but the movie itself actually kind of like poking fun at the people who did ship Judy and Nick. You know, they're having fun because clearly clearly Disney are aware that some people actually, I think many people does ship Judy and Nick together, and that's why they decided to make that into like one of the plot point in the movie. And I'm not saying that this is like an exact confirmation, but it came really close, because at some point in the beginning of the movie they kind of like making fun of it, where Judy and Nick are undercover and they pretend to be like parents, and at some point Nick call Judy baby in the movie, which just kind of surprised me. I mean, you kind of seen the clip on YouTube, but it was like, yeah, it's just them poking fun and just having fun at it, right? But there is a moment later on in near the third act of the movie where Judy and Nick has a heart-to-heart conversation where it kind of feels like they are alluding to the fact that we can actually make Judy and Nick to be like an actual couple, if they really want to. But I feel like in this moment, it's probably going to be a split 50-50 here, where you kind of like interpret the situation to be like a friendly situation, the partnership situation, or it's going to be like alluding to the fact that maybe these two could become a couple in Zootopia 3, which I think they also tease a sequel, which is amazing. But yeah, like the heart-to-heart conversation itself are actually really great scenes. Not only it was a good scene for the characters, but it's also, I imagine it will be a good scene for the people who ship Judy and Nick. That I think they're having a heart-to-heart conversation that you know that doesn't feel goofy. It was actually like a really emotional in a way that you understand why Nick kind of behaved in a certain way in this movie. And I guess because in this movie, Judy and Nick has a clashing view, and how they should solve the case, that obviously create a conflict between the two of them. And at some point, I think I was kind of getting annoyed with like Nick point of view, where he just wanted to kind of like move away and give up from the case, that I was kind of found it to be pretty weird, to the point that I was like, well, what happened to your characters in the first movie? This is kind of weird. But once they eventually explain why Nick kind of behaved this way, it does make sense, and it does makes me more emotional with Nick's character, and which eventually lead to the heart-to-heart conversation between him and Judy. And it was, yeah, it's an amazing moment that I absolutely love, and there's also a scene near the end of the movie where Nick does say the three words that the shippers are expecting, or like wishing for that to happen. And Nick does say those three words to Judy, which you can probably guess what those words are, But if you haven't, like, well, I'm just gonna not gonna spoil it, I guess. I mean, I guess it's kind of spoilers already, and maybe you guys already know. I think people already know what these three words are, which I did not even expect Nick Wall to said that in the movie. I thought it was like, oh well, they're kind of like having fun of, with it, and then they kind of having a heart-to-heart conversation previously. I think that's enough. But there is another scene near the end where Nick actually said those three words to Judy, and I was like, oh wow, okay. Which again could be interpreted to be like a partnership, relationship in a way, or it could be hinting that, hey, this two could become a couple if you really want to, but yeah, I imagine the internet is gonna be I imagine it's gonna be pretty weird, where people are gonna be arguing left and right, interpreting, having their own interpretation of the conversation itself, which I think again could goes both ways. I think maybe the filmmakers are just like waiting and see how the internet will react, or the fans will react to Judy and Nick, so before maybe they are making that decision in Zootopia 3, it's a possibility now. And there is even a post-credit scene, which, by the way, if you want to stick around, then there is going to be a post-credit scene near, like, at the very end, where we get to see Judy in the apartment again, and then she actually recorded Nick saying those three words to her, and then she just keep playing those words over and over and over again, using the camera pan, that you see in the first movie. That I was like, wow, okay, they really went there, huh? Which is kind of surprising for me, But yeah. Anyway, this whole review suddenly turned into like Judy and Nick shipper here. But again, the whole point is that I love Zootopia too. I think also I also love this movie because it has a villain finally. Because like Disney movie kind of like devoid of villains recently. They barely have anyone. As a antagonist in the storyline. But I'm happy to say that Zootopia 2 actually has a clear villain from the beginning. And it was absolutely fantastic. And I think this family of lynx, which is the main villain of the movie, I think they are good villain. There is even a scene between Nick and one of the Link's family members, which I think is the father, where the scene just turned into like a really brutal or like a dark. It wasn't really brutal, but I guess that there is some dark moments that happens in this movie, which I really really appreciate, to the point that I was like, wow, I actually feel afraid, of losing either Judy or Nick in this movie. And it was absolutely fantastic, because like, not again, Disney movie never really made me fear for like the main characters or something like that, but in this movie I actually kind of feel afraid for, for them getting hurt in the moment. That I think the movie are actually trying to have some darker tone in a way that I actually really really appreciate. It does work, how this family member becoming a villain. I think they are kind of intimidating in a way. So I think that on itself are great. But I think if I have to criticize this movie, I think this movie has so many plot conveniences. That kind of reminds me of like the Running Man, the Edgar Wright movie recently, where I criticized that movie for having so many conveniences for the main characters. And I guess same thing kind of happens in this movie, where some of the side characters from the previous movie are returning, as like a cameo or some sort, and then they are like conveniently helping the main characters, to achieve certain goal. Even though it's not as bad as the Running Man, because eventually Judy and Nick has to, like, again, using their own intellect to solve the case, but I'm just saying there is a moment where maybe sometimes they ending up in a different place, and then suddenly there is like a different, like a random characters that was just suddenly there, and just suddenly helping them to go to a certain location. And that kind of happens several times in the movie, that I was like, oh, okay, I kind of wish they pull back on that, and just like using Judy and Nick intellect way more, compared to just like having a random character show up, or like a side character from the previous movie show up and just like help them to guide them to certain points. That I feel like it was quite convenient for the two of them. But again, it's not as bad as the Running Man, the remake one, but still it was there. So yeah. And also one more thing, I have to praise the score by Michael Giacchino. It felt so good, and of course the new song by Shakira, Giselle, named Zoo, which is like, yeah, it was amazing. I really really love that. I think it's also quite as catchy as, Try Everything from the first movie. It feels so energetic in a way, especially they played that again in the end of the movie. It was like, yeah, it was fun. I feel so happy. So yeah, it's great. I think this is a great sequel in my opinion. Not as good as the first movie, but still it's a really worthy follow-up, that I think it was like, yeah, I think most people will love this movie in my opinion. And especially the people who ship Judy and Nick, that, yeah, I cannot wait to see the internet reacting to those moments, that I think is gonna be a really interesting argument between two sides, that try to say that they were just partners, or they were actually in, or like they're actually teasing a romantic relationship, because it could happen. There is so many teasing in this movie. So there's that. Disney are aware, which is like, wow, I respect that. But anyway, guys, that's my review for just Zootopia 2. Let me know, guys, in the comment section below, what do you guys think about this movie right here? Do you guys prefer this second movie compared to the first one, or do you guys think the first movie is still better than this one? And what is your favorite scene of the movie? And also let me know, guys, do you guys ship Judy and Nick together? And after you guys seeing the movie, does the scene that happens in that movie actually support, or like make, or like convince you way more than Judy and Nick can become a couple? Or it's actually just like, oh, like it's just like they're just having a partnership conversation? Just let me know all that in the comment section below. And what is your idea for Zootopia 3? Because in the post-credit scene they did introduce something interesting there. I was like, oh, like it could be a teaser for like what could be Zootopia 3. And I think it was amazing that the filmmaker actually planning Zootopia 3 in a way, or like at least like teasing that, hey, we could do more if you guys want to. So I hope they do Zootopia 3, and I hope they don't really wait for 10 years to do like the third movie. I hope that we could get a third movie pretty soon. And in terms of like, again, Judy and Nick relationship, they could explore that in Zootopia 3, and they could actually have like an interesting storyline. They could actually have a serious storyline about an interspecies relationship if they really want to. Again, it doesn't have to be comedic. They can actually treat it that as a serious maybe conversation in the movies, a serious plot line in the third movie. That's a possibility. So who knows? But either way, guys, that's my review for Zootopia 2. If you guys enjoyed this review, then make sure you guys, alright, that subscribe and like button, share our videos, do some stuff, and stay tuned for more videos in the future. And again, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one then. Bye.